You walk into a room and the energy shifts. They smile, but their eyes betray them. They include you in conversations, but you feel the invisible barrier. You've always sensed it, that underlying current of resentment, that subtle hostility disguised as politeness. And you've been driving yourself crazy, wondering, what did I do wrong? Tonight I'm going to give you the answer Niccolo Machiavelli discovered 5 centuries ago when he dissected human nature like a surgeon. The truth isn't that you did something wrong. It's that you exist in ways that threaten them. And I'm about to show you exactly why. Yes, they hate you, but not for the reasons you think. Machiavelli understood that hatred isn't personal, it's structural. It's built into the very fabric of how humans compete for resources, status, and psychological safety. The 8 reasons I'm about to reveal aren't character flaws you need to fix. They're power dynamics you need to understand. Because once you know why they hate you, you can finally stop trying to earn love from people who are psychologically incapable of giving it. Reason 1. You remind them of their unfulfilled potential. Your progress is their mirror, and they hate what they see. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, meaning people react more to what they see than what they experience. And what do they see when they look at you? They see someone who's doing what they gave up on, someone who's pursuing what they abandoned, someone who's becoming what they convinced themselves was impossible. You're not hated for failing. You're hated for trying. Every time you take a step toward your goals, you're silently indicting everyone who stopped walking toward theirs. When you invest in yourself, you highlight their self-neglect. When you maintain standards, you expose their compromises. When you grow, you make their stagnation visible. This is why your coworker gets strange when you mention your side business. Why your friends become distant when you start working out. Why family members suddenly have opinions about your unrealistic dreams the moment you start making them real. They're not concerned about your failure. They're terrified of your success, because your success proves their excuses were choices. Machiavelli understood that envy is more irreconcilable than hatred, because envy contains an admission of inferiority. When someone envies you, they're acknowledging that you have something they want, but don't believe they can achieve. That acknowledgement breeds a resentment so deep, it masquerades as concern for your well-being. You've probably noticed how people's support disappears right when you need it most, when you're actually making progress. They're supportive when you're struggling, because your struggle confirms their worldview that dreams are dangerous. But your progress is proof that they were wrong to give up on themselves. Reason 2. You refuse to participate in collective mediocrity. You won't join the conspiracy against your own potential. Here's something Machiavelli observed about human nature that will explain so much of your social isolation. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that they create unspoken agreements to lower standards collectively. And your refusal to sign that agreement makes you a threat to their psychological comfort. Think about your last workplace. Remember how there were unspoken rules about not working too hard, not being too enthusiastic, not standing out too much? Remember how anyone who violated these invisible agreements was labeled as trying too hard or making everyone else look bad. You've experienced this your entire life, the punishment that comes from refusing to participate in group mediocrity. When you maintain high standards, you force others to confront their low ones. When you refuse to gossip, you highlight their cruelty. When you won't complain constantly, you expose their negativity. When you actually pursue excellence, you threaten the comfortable mediocrity everyone else has agreed to accept. Machiavelli wrote about the conspiracy of the weak against the strong, and this is exactly what you're experiencing. It's not a conscious conspiracy, it's an unconscious agreement that everyone should remain equally limited, so no one has to face their own capacity for growth. You've seen this in friend groups where everyone bonds over shared complaints, but resents anyone who actually tries to solve their problems. You've experienced this in families where everyone accepts dysfunction as normal and treats the healthy person as the problem. You've lived this in social circles where authenticity is punished and performance is rewarded. They don't hate you because you think you're better than them. They hate you because you refuse to agree that you're all equally powerless. Your refusal to accept limitations they've embraced feels like an indictment of their surrender. Reason 3. You make them question their life choices. Your authenticity is a mirror they don't want to look into. Machiavelli understood that everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. But here's what he also knew. When someone authentic appears in a world of performance, they don't just stand out. They threaten the entire illusion everyone else is maintaining. You've noticed how people get uncomfortable when you're genuinely yourself. When you express actual opinions instead of saying what's expected. When you pursue what you actually want instead of what you should want. When you make decisions based on your values instead of others' approval. Your authenticity doesn't just make you different. It makes their inauthenticity visible. Think about the people in your life who seem most threatened by you. I guarantee they're living lives that look good from the outside, but feel empty from the inside. They're in relationships that provide security but not fulfillment. They're in careers that offer status but not satisfaction. They're following paths that meet expectations but ignore their deepest desires. And then you show up, living according to your internal compass instead of external validation, following your intuition instead of convention, choosing growth over comfort, authenticity over approval, meaning over money. Your very existence is a question mark next to all their life choices. Machiavelli observed that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. You're doing now what they wish they had done years ago. You're making changes they're afraid to make. You're taking risks they convinced themselves were impossible. And every day you continue on your authentic path, their regret deepens. This isn't about judgment. It's about psychology. When someone sees you living the life they abandoned, it forces them to confront not just what they've lost, but what they're still choosing to lose. Every day they remain in situations that don't honor their true self. Reason 4, you threaten their sense of control. Independent people are dangerous to those who need dependence. Here's a Machiavellian truth that will revolutionize how you understand your relationships. He who abandons what is done for what ought to be done sooner effects his ruin than his preservation, unless he builds his own power base. And that's exactly what you're doing, whether you realize it or not. You're building independence, and independence terrifies people who derive their sense of power from others' dependence. Look at the relationships where you feel most hated or resented. I bet they're relationships where someone has been trying to control your choices, manage your emotions, or direct your life path. And I bet the hatred intensified the moment you started making decisions without their input or approval. Controllers hate nothing more than people they can't control. And you're becoming increasingly uncontrollable. You're developing your own opinions instead of adopting theirs. You're creating your own sources of validation instead of depending on theirs. You're building your own life instead of living as a supporting character in theirs. Machiavelli wrote that, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. The people who claim to love you but hate your independence never loved you. They loved their ability to influence you. You've experienced this with parents who supported your dreams until those dreams took you away from their plans for your life. With partners who encouraged your growth until that growth made you less dependent on their approval. With friends who celebrated your success until that success gave you options they couldn't control. Your independence isn't just personal freedom. It's a threat to every relationship that was built on power imbalance rather than mutual respect. When you no longer need their approval to feel worthy, their primary source of influence over you disappears. And that loss of control feels like a loss of connection, even though what they're losing was never real connection to begin with. Reason 5, you expose their cowardice. Your courage highlights their fear. Machiavelli believed that fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions, but she still leaves us to direct the other half. You've been directing your half with increasing courage, making choices that align with your values, even when they come with social costs. And your courage is a constant reminder to others of their cowardice. Every boundary you set exposes someone else's inability to set boundaries. Every risk you take highlights someone else's choice to play it safe. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you illuminate someone else's decision to perform instead of exist. Your courage isn't just personal, it's political, because it threatens the status quo that keeps everyone else comfortable in their limitations. Think about the people who seem most critical of your choices. They're the ones who wanted to make similar choices but talked themselves out of it. They're the ones who had dreams but chose security. They're the ones who felt called to something greater but decided it was too risky, too uncertain, too likely to disappoint others. You've seen this with people who criticize your career change while staying in jobs they hate, with those who mock your standards while settling for relationships that don't fulfill them, with family members who call your dreams unrealistic while living lives that feel like slow death. Machiavelli understood that since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. But what happens when your very existence makes cowards feel seen? They can't love you because your courage reminds them of their fear. They can't respect you because your boldness highlights their timidity. Your willingness to disappoint others in order to honor yourself is perhaps the most threatening quality you possess. Because if you can handle their disapproval, what power do they have over you? If you can face their judgment and continue living according to your values, how can they manipulate you back into compliance? Reason 6, you won't enable their victim mentality. Your empowerment threatens their powerlessness. Here's where Machiavelli's insights become surgical in their precision. He wrote, "Since a man who wants to act virtuously in every way necessarily comes to grief among so many who are not virtuous." But what he meant wasn't that virtue is punished. It's that virtue exposes the choice to remain unvirtuous, and people hate being confronted with their own agency. You've stopped playing the victim in your own life. You've started taking responsibility for your choices, your reactions, your future. You've begun to see challenges as opportunities rather than evidence of cosmic unfairness. And this transformation threatens everyone around you who has built their identity around being powerless. Think about the conversations you can no longer participate in, the complaint sessions that feel toxic, the blame games that go nowhere. The endless discussions about how unfair life is, how impossible change is, how powerless everyone is against their circumstances. Your presence in these conversations has become disruptive because you no longer agree with the fundamental premise that they're victims of forces beyond their control. Machiavelli observed that people willingly change their ruler, hoping to fare better. But what happens when someone suggests they don't need a ruler at all, that they have the power to rule themselves? Your refusal to participate in collective powerlessness makes you dangerous to those who have found comfort in shared helplessness. Your empowerment isn't just personal transformation, it's social disruption. Because if you can take control of your life, what excuse do they have for remaining out of control of theirs? If you can change your circumstances, why can't they? If you can break patterns, heal wounds, and create new possibilities, what's stopping them from doing the same? Reason 7. You're becoming everything they gave up on being. You're living proof that their surrender was premature. This is perhaps the most painful reason people hate you, and Machiavelli understood it deeply when he wrote about the psychology of power and potential. You represent the road not taken, the dreams abandoned. The person they were before life convinced them to settle for less than they deserved. You're not just succeeding. You're succeeding in ways they once imagined for themselves. You're not just growing. You're growing into qualities they once possessed, but buried under layers of compromise and resignation. You're not just living authentically. You're living the authentic life they abandoned when they decided it was too risky to be themselves. Every conversation with you is a reminder of conversations they used to have with themselves about who they wanted to become. Every goal you pursue echoes goals they once held before reality, convince them to be more practical. Every risk you take resurrects risks they once considered before fear made the decision for them. This is why parents sometimes resent children who pursue the paths they abandoned. Why partners sometimes sabotage each other's growth when it reminds them of their own unlived potential. Why friends sometimes become enemies when one person starts actualizing dreams they all once shared. Machiavelli knew that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that they'll sacrifice their future selves for present comfort. But you haven't made that sacrifice. You're still connected to your future self, still working toward who you're meant to become, still believing that your potential deserves to be actualized. And that belief, that simple, persistent belief that you deserve to become who you're capable of being, is intolerable to those who stopped believing it about themselves. Your hope threatens their resignation. Your persistence threatens their surrender. Your continued growth threatens their decision to stop growing. They don't hate you for who you are. They hate you for who you're becoming because it reminds them of who they gave up on becoming. Reason 8. You refuse to make their dysfunction feel normal. Your health highlights their toxicity. Machiavelli's final and most crucial insight about human nature reveals why some people will hate you no matter what you do. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances. But what happens when someone appears healthy in a world addicted to dysfunction? When someone chooses peace in a culture that thrives on drama? When someone embodies balance in relationships built on chaos? You've become intolerable to toxic people because you won't participate in toxic dynamics. You won't engage in drama. You won't enable manipulation. You won't normalize emotional abuse. You won't pretend that chaos is normal, that dysfunction is acceptable, that toxicity is just how people are. Your refusal to participate in unhealthy dynamics doesn't just protect you, It exposes the dysfunction everyone else has agreed to accept. When you set boundaries, you highlight their boundary violations. When you communicate directly, you expose their manipulation. When you respond with calm, you reveal their chaos as a choice rather than an inevitability. Think about the relationships that ended when you got healthier, the friends who disappeared when you stopped participating in gossip, the family members who became distant when you refused to engage in drama, the romantic interests who lost interest when you developed self-respect. Machiavelli understood that there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. And that's exactly what you're doing. Introducing a new order where health is normal, where respect is required, where dysfunction is not acceptable. Toxic people need others to be toxic to feel normal. Manipulative people need others to be manipulable to feel powerful. Chaotic people need others to be chaotic to feel like chaos is just part of life. Your health threatens their entire worldview about what relationships should look like. They don't hate you because you're difficult. They hate you because you make their toxicity look like a choice rather than a character trait. They don't hate you because you're demanding. They hate you because your standards make their lack of standards visible. The deeper truth. Hatred as information. Stop trying to change their minds. Start using their hatred as guidance. Now that you understand the 8 core reasons people hate you, here's the Machiavellian truth that changes everything. Their hatred isn't your problem to solve. It's your data to process. Every person who hates you for growing is showing you who doesn't belong in your future. Every relationship that can't survive your authenticity is revealing itself as a relationship built on your willingness to be inauthentic. Machiavelli taught rulers to learn how not to be good, meaning learn how to prioritize effectiveness over niceness, truth over comfort, results over approval. For you, this means learning how not to be convenient, learning how not to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold your full magnitude. The people who hate you for these 8 reasons are doing you an enormous favor. They're showing you who would control your growth if you let them, who would limit your potential if you gave them permission, who would keep you small if you prioritized their comfort over your expansion. You've been trying to win over people who are psychologically invested in your limitations. You've been seeking approval from those who need your struggles to feel superior. You've been attempting to earn love from people who can only connect with others through shared dysfunction. But here's what Machiavelli knew about power. It is much safer to be feared than loved. Not because fear is better than love, but because the respect that comes from your strength is more reliable than affection based on your weakness. People may hate your boundaries, but they'll respect them. They may resent your standards, but they'll adapt to them. The strategy: from hatred to liberation. Their hatred is your freedom waiting to be claimed. This is where Machiavelli's harsh truths become your pathway to unprecedented liberation. Once you understand that their hatred is about their limitations, not your inadequacy, everything changes. You stop trying to manage their emotions and start managing your energy. You stop seeking their approval and start trusting your own judgment. The 8 reasons people hate you aren't problems to fix. They're qualities to embrace. Your growth threatens their stagnation? Grow faster. Your authenticity exposes their performance. Become more authentic. Your independence threatens their control. Become more independent. Machiavelli advised that The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Look around you right now. How many people in your circle celebrate your victories without reservation? How many support your growth without trying to manage it? How many love you for who you're becoming, not who you've been? Your social circle is a reflection of your self-worth. Your tolerance for mediocre relationships reveals what you believe you deserve. Your willingness to accept conditional love demonstrates your fear of demanding genuine respect. But here's the strategy that revolutionizes everything. Instead of trying to convert the people who hate these 8 qualities, start attracting people who appreciate them. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to earn love from those incapable of giving it, invest your energy in relationships with people who already value what you offer. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about becoming intelligent about where you invest your most precious resources, your time, energy, and emotional availability. It's about recognizing that some people will never be capable of loving the real you. And that's information to accept, not a problem to solve. Your hidden value. You came here feeling hurt, confused, isolated by the hatred you've experienced. You're leaving with something infinitely more valuable. The understanding that their hatred isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's evidence of your power. It's evidence that you're growing beyond their ability to contain you, living beyond their capacity to control you, becoming beyond their willingness to accept you. The 8 reasons people hate you: your growth, your authenticity, your independence, your courage, your empowerment, your potential, your health. These aren't character flaws to fix. They're the very qualities that make you magnificent. They're the reasons the right people will love you as fiercely as the wrong people hate you. Machiavelli's greatest lesson wasn't about how to gain power over others. It was about how to reclaim power over yourself, how to stop giving others authority over your self-worth, how to stop accepting limitations they project onto you, how to stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold your full magnitude. The people who hate you for being everything on this list are showing you exactly who doesn't deserve access to the person you're becoming. They're revealing which relationships were built on your willingness to remain small rather than your capacity to grow large. They're identifying the environments that require self-betrayal rather than self-expression. And that information is invaluable, because now you know where not to invest your precious energy. Now you know which standards to maintain rather than lower. Now you know which doors to stop knocking on, so you can build your own house instead. You don't need them to understand your growth. You need to keep growing. You don't need them to approve of your authenticity. You need to become more authentic. You don't need them to love your independence. You need to claim even more independence. The hatred you've experienced isn't your cross to bear. It's your compass pointing toward freedom. Follow that compass. Trust that guidance. Embrace the magnificent truth that their inability to love the real you says absolutely nothing about your lovability and everything about their limitations. If this video just gave you permission to stop apologizing for being everything they're afraid to become, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're dismantling people-pleasing and building self-sovereignty, one truth at a time. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their hatred isn't personal, it's psychological. And drop a comment telling me which of these 8 reasons resonated most with your experience. Your story matters, and your transformation starts right now.